Picture yourself walking into a luxury hotel, the kind with polished marble floors, chandeliers that catch the light just right, and a staff trained to make you feel like royalty. You expect warmth, respect, a moment to exhale. But what if, instead, you're met with a cold stare? A raised eyebrow, a question that cuts deeper than it should. Are you sure you're in the right place for too many people? This isn't a hypothetical, it's a reality, one that reveals a hidden bias in the hospitality industry, a shadow that lingers behind the smiles. In 2023, the American Hotel and Lodging Association reported that 28% of Black guests at upscale hotels felt unfairly treated profiled based on their appearance, questioned about their reservations, or outright dismissed. That's nearly 1 in 3 people who walk in expecting a welcome and leave feeling like an outsider. This isn't just bad service. It's a betrayal of what hospitality promises a place for everyone. And it's not unique to hotels. Think about the last time you saw someone judged in a store, a restaurant, or an airport because they didn't look the part. We've all witnessed it, and too often, we've let it slide. Take a real example from 2020 at a Ritz-Carlton in California. A Black couple, dressed casually after a long flight, was asked to provide 2 forms of ID and proof of reservation while the guests behind them, dressed in suits, were waved through without a glance. They shared their story on social media, and it struck a chord because it wasn't just their story. It was the story of countless others who've been made to feel invisible in spaces meant to celebrate them. The problem isn't one rude employee or one bad day. It's a system, a culture that quietly allows bias to fester, unchecked, under the guise of protecting the brand. So, why does this happen? It's not always overt racism or malice. Often, it's unconscious bias. Those snap judgments we make about who belongs and who doesn't, rooted in stereotypes we don't even realize we carry. In hospitality, where first impressions are everything, these biases can turn a guest's experience into a moment of shame. And when leaders ignore it, when complaints vanish into corporate inboxes, the cycle continues. This brings us to a day in Seattle, at the Grand Horizon Hotel, where one woman was about to confront that cycle head-on. Maya Johnson walked through those glass doors, not knowing she'd spark a reckoning that would change an entire industry. But before we meet her, let's step into that lobby, where a single sentence, "This place isn't for people like you," set off a chain reaction no one saw coming. It was an ordinary afternoon at the Grand Horizon Hotel in Seattle, the kind where the lobby hums with quiet, luxury guests checking in, suitcases rolling across marble, soft jazz in the background. But for Maya Johnson, the moment she stepped through those glass doors, the air shifted. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, her sneakers barely making a sound, she carried herself with a quiet confidence. She approached the front desk, expecting the routine, a smile, a key, a welcome. Instead, she met a wall of judgment. Behind the counter stood Richard Holt, the hotel manager, his arms crossed, his face already set in suspicion. Flanking him were Jessica Lee, with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes, and Ethan Carter, leaning back, sizing Maya up like she was a problem waiting to happen. "I have a reservation," Maya said evenly. "Penthouse suite. Name's Johnson." Richard didn't check the system. He didn't even glance at his screen. Instead, he squinted and said, "That's a high-tier room. Are you sure you're at the right hotel?" The words weren't just a question, they were an accusation, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Maya slid her ID and black credit card across the counter, calm as ever. But Richard picked up the card with 2 fingers, holding it like it might burn him. "This looks suspicious," he muttered. Jessica pressed a button, her voice crackling over the intercom security. "We may have an unauthorized guest attempting to access a premium suite." Ethan chimed in, smirking. "People try this all the time. Fake cards, fake names, hoping we won't check." And just like that, Maya's card was locked in a safe, her dignity under attack, her presence reduced to a threat. This wasn't just poor service. It was a public humiliation, rooted in a snap judgment about who Maya was or wasn't based on her appearance. Richard and his team didn't see a guest. They saw a stereotype. And that's where the real mistake lies, assuming you can read someone's worth from their clothes, their skin, their lack of a designer label. It's a mistake that happens far too often. In 2024, a viral post on X described a similar incident at a Miami hotel, where a Black woman in casual attire was asked to prove her reservation while others were checked in without question. The comments flooded in. "This happened to me in Vegas. Same at a Hilton in Chicago." These aren't isolated moments, they're a pattern, one that thrives when we let bias go unchallenged. What makes this moment at Grand Horizon so chilling is how deliberate it was. Richard didn't stumble into his words. He chose them, wielding his authority like a weapon. Jessica and Ethan didn't hesitate to follow his lead, amplifying the insult. They thought they were untouchable, that their version of policy would protect them. But they didn't know who Maya was. They didn't know she'd faced this before, that she'd built her empire on the ashes of moments just like this. And they didn't know that in a few short minutes. The lobby they thought they controlled was about to turn against them. Because Maya Johnson wasn't just a guest. She was a force one shaped by a past that taught her how to stand firm when the world tries to push you out. Let's step back and see where that strength came from, and why this moment wasn't just about a hotel room, but about a fight for something much bigger. To understand why Maya Johnson stood so unshaken in that hostile lobby, we need to step back to the moments that forged her. Maya wasn't born with the keys to a hospitality empire. She built it, brick by brick, from the ashes of rejection, from the sting of being told she didn't belong. Her story isn't just about success, it's about what happens when you turn pain into purpose. At 24, Maya walked into a boutique hotel in Atlanta after a red-eye flight. Exhausted, dressed in sweats, she had a confirmed reservation for a standard room. The clerk at the desk barely looked at her ID before saying, "You don't look like someone who'd stay here." He claimed the system was down and told her to come back later. Maya tried to explain, but the dismissal was final. That night, she slept in her car, the weight of shame settling into her bones. But by morning, something shifted. Instead of shrinking, she started sketching a business plan, one that would grow into the Grand Horizon, a chain built on the promise that no guest would ever feel like an outsider. That wasn't the only time. At 29 in Los Angeles for a conference, Maya, dressed in a sharp but simple pantsuit, was made to wait 2 hours at check-in while the staff verified her identity. Meanwhile, she watched others breeze through without a second glance. Each slight, each sideways look, was a lesson hospitality, as it existed, wasn't for everyone. And those lessons didn't just hurt, they shaped her. According to a 2022 Stanford study, experiences of discrimination like these don't just bruise the heart, they create chronic stress, eroding health and trust. For Maya, they did something else. They lit a fire. Her story echoes others who've turned adversity into action. Think of Kenneth Chenault, the former CEO of American Express, who faced racial barriers in corporate America but used them to fuel his rise, championing diversity at every turn. Like Chanot, Maya didn't let rejection define her. She let it refine her. Those nights of doubt, those moments of being pushed to the margins, became the blueprint for a company where respect isn't a privilege, it's a policy. She drafted rules for her hotels, zero tolerance for guest profiling, mandatory training, systems to track every complaint. Grand Horizon wasn't just a business. It was her answer to a world that tried to make her small. But resilience isn't just about building something new. It's about carrying the weight of memory and choosing to stand tall anyway. When Maya walked into that Seattle lobby, she wasn't just a CEO. She was the 24-year-old who slept in her car, the 29-year-old who waited for hours, the woman who'd learned that silence in the face of injustice is its own kind of betrayal. And she was ready. That readiness sparked something else that day, not just in Maya, but in the people around her. Because when one person stands firm, it gives others permission to do the same. Let's meet the guests who saw what was happening, picked up their phones, and refused to look away. In the midst of that tense moment at the Grand Horizon Hotel, as Maya Johnson faced a barrage of accusations, something remarkable happened. The lobby, once a stage for humiliation, became a space of solidarity. The guests, strangers who could have stayed silent, chose to act. They didn't just watch, they stood up, picked up their phones, and turned a private injustice into a public reckoning. This is the power of witnesses, the moment when ordinary people decide that silence is no longer an option. Among them was Sophie Miller, a travel blogger from San Francisco, who felt her stomach twist the second she heard Richard Holt's venomous words. "This place isn't for people like you." Sophie had seen this before, not in a hotel, but in a boutique store years ago, where a clerk dismissed her friend based on her casual clothes. That memory drove her to raise her phone and start recording, whispering to her friend, Jacob Nguyen. "This needs to be seen." Jacob, a tech consultant with a knack for live streaming, didn't hesitate. He went live on X, narrating the scene as it unfolded. "We're at the Grand Horizon in Seattle, and we're watching something ugly happen in real time." Within minutes, their posts were gaining traction, with hundreds, then thousands, of viewers flooding in, their comments a chorus of outrage and support. But it wasn't just Sophie and Jacob. Other guests stepped forward, forming a loose half-circle around Maya, their bodies a quiet but firm barrier between her and the front desk. A woman with a stroller moved closer, her eyes locked on Richard. A man in a navy suit unplugged his phone charger and stood nearby, his presence a silent protest. These weren't activists or influencers, just people who saw wrong and refused to let it slide. Their actions remind us of a simple truth when we witness injustice. We have a choice. We can look away, or we can lean in. This kind of collective action isn't new. In 2023, a similar moment went viral at a Chicago hotel, where guests recorded staff refusing service to a Black family, sparking a national conversation on X. The video led to policy changes at that chain, proving that a single act of witnessing can ripple far beyond the moment. But too often, we don't act. We freeze, worried about making a scene or doubting our own instincts. That hesitation is what allows bias to thrive when we assume someone else will speak up, or worse, that it's not our place. What made the Grand Horizon different was the speed and courage of these guests. Sophie's Reddit post, captioned, "This is happening now," wasn't just a call for attention, it was a call for accountability. Jacob's livestream didn't just document, it invited the world to bear witness. And the guests who stood with Maya didn't just protect her, they challenged a system that had grown comfortable in its flaws. Their actions amplified Maya's stand, turning a personal slight into a moment of collective power. But one voice was still missing in that lobby, a voice from within the hotel itself. Someone who knew the truth, who saw the system's cracks up close, and chose to break ranks. Let's meet Elena Ruiz, the employee who dared to speak when everyone else followed orders. In the charged atmosphere of the Grand Horizon Hotel lobby, as Maya Johnson stood firm against a tide of accusations, one voice broke through from within the system itself. Elena Ruiz, a young concierge who had spent 3 years behind the scenes, stepped forward not just to support Maya, but to challenge the very culture that had silenced her for too long. In a room full of followers, Elena became the lone ally, proving that courage isn't about power, it's about choosing truth over fear. Elena wasn't loud or confrontational. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. Her reservation is valid, she told Richard Holt, the manager who had dismissed Maya as a fraud. I saw her name in the system this morning. It's marked with executive clearance. When Richard snapped at her to stay quiet, threatening her job, Elena didn't back down. I won't lie for you, she said, her gaze unwavering. That moment wasn't just defiance, it was a declaration. Elena had seen enough. And she was done staying silent. Why did Elena act when others didn't? It wasn't just about Maya's reservation. 2 years earlier, Elena had witnessed a similar incident at the Grand Horizon. A solo Black woman, dressed casually, was questioned about her booking while others were checked in without issue. Elena reported it to Richard, but he dismissed it as overreacting. The complaint vanished, and Elena was told to focus on her job. That experience stayed with her, a quiet wound that grew into resolve. She vowed that if it happened again, she wouldn't let the truth be buried. Maya's arrival was that moment, and Elena chose to honor her own promise. This kind of courage is rare but not unheard of. In 2024, a New York hotel employee, speaking anonymously to the New York Times, revealed how she risked her job to report racial profiling by her manager. Her actions led to an internal investigation and eventual policy changes, but they came at a cost: months of workplace tension and fear of retaliation. Elena faced that same risk. Standing up to Richard meant defying a boss who controlled her livelihood in a workplace where loyalty often trumped integrity. Yet she acted, not because it was safe, but because it was right. Elena's story shows us what's at stake when one person dares to break ranks. It's not just about one incident, it's about exposing a pattern. She later revealed to Maya that she'd logged 3 complaints about biased behavior at the front desk in the past 2 months, all dismissed by Richard. Her willingness to speak gave Maya the evidence she needed to act decisively. Elena didn't just support a guest, she cracked open a system that had thrived on secrecy. But Elena's courage wasn't the end of the story. It was a spark. Her stand gave Maya the final piece she needed to reveal who she truly was and turn the tide in that lobby. Let's see how Maya took that spark and set the entire system ablaze. The air in the Grand Horizon Hotel lobby was thick with tension, the weight of Richard Holt's accusations hanging like a storm cloud. Maya Johnson stood at the center, calm, unflinching, as the guests' phones captured every moment and Elena Ruiz's courage cracked open the truth. Then, in a single breath, Maya changed everything. "This lobby belongs to me," she said, her voice steady, not loud, but carrying a force that silenced the room. In that moment, Maya wasn't just a guest defending herself, she was the CEO of Grand Horizon Hospitality, revealing her power with a precision that turned the tables on her accusers. Maya didn't shout or gloat. She picked up her phone and called her executive assistant, Nia Thompson. "Escalate the system," she said. "Terminate Richard Holt, Jessica Lee, and Ethan Carter. Immediate removal from all Horizon properties." Within seconds, their access badges buzzed red, locking them out of the system in real time. The safe holding Maya's card was opened by Elena, and Maya reclaimed what was hers. Then, she turned to Elena and said, "You're taking over guest services, effective now." It was a masterclass in leadership, not driven by ego, but by accountability. Maya didn't just fire her staff, she dismantled their authority and rebuilt trust on the spot. This kind of decisive action is rare, but it's what true leadership looks like. Maya's approach reminds me of Satya Nadella, who, as Microsoft's CEO, transformed a toxic culture by addressing failures head-on, prioritizing empathy and transparency. Like Nadella, Maya used technology, her hotel's management system, to enforce justice swiftly, ensuring no one could hide behind protocol. But her power wasn't just in her title, it was in her restraint, her choice to let Richard and his team dig their own graves before acting. She gave them every chance to do the right thing. And when they didn't, she held them accountable with surgical clarity. Real-world parallels show us how pivotal these moments can be. In 2018, after a racial profiling incident at a Starbucks in Philadelphia, CEO Kevin Johnson closed 8,000 stores for a day of anti-bias training. It wasn't perfect, but it was a signal. Leadership means owning your failures and acting, not deflecting. Too often, though, leaders make the mistake of covering up misconduct to save face. They issue vague apologies or shift blame, letting the root issues fester. Maya didn't do that. She saw the problem bias baked into her hotel's culture and struck at its heart, not with anger, but with purpose. Maya's reckoning wasn't just about one lobby or one day. It was the spark for something bigger, a chance to confront not just the actions of a few employees, but the system that enabled them. Because, as Maya would soon discover, the rot went deeper than Richard Holt's prejudice. It reached into the very foundations of her company. When Maya Johnson reclaimed her lobby at the Grand Horizon Hotel, it felt like justice swift, undeniable, complete. But as the dust settled, a deeper truth emerged, one that went beyond Richard Holt's prejudice or the actions of his team. Maya's phone pinged with a notification from her compliance team, and her jaw tightened as she read it. Richard hadn't acted alone. The bias that humiliated her wasn't just one man's failing, it was rooted in a system that had quietly protected him for years. This was the moment Maya realized to truly fix her hotel. She had to uncover the rot at its core. The notification revealed a pattern of buried complaints. Richard had submitted false reports to regional headquarters, marking guest grievances as resolved without investigation. Behind him stood Michael Turner, a former regional director who retired under a cloud of HR violations 3 months earlier. Turner had instructed managers like Richard to treat certain guests, those who didn't fit the high-tier profile, as low priority. It wasn't written in any manual, but the message was clear: some people mattered more than others. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, not in defeat, but to steady herself. Then she acted. "We're not just reforming this hotel," she told her team. "We're auditing every property in Horizon's network, every complaint, every cover-up, every lie." This kind of systemic failure isn't unique to Grand Horizon. A 2019 Harvard Business Review study found that 60% of corporate complaints about bias are never investigated, often to protect the company's image. When leaders prioritize reputation over accountability, they create a culture where prejudice thrives in the shadows. We saw this in 2022 when Marriott faced a lawsuit after employees at one of its properties racially profiled a Black guest, only for the company to later admit that similar complaints had been ignored for years. These aren't just mistakes, they're choices, made by systems that value profit over people. Maya refused to let that be her company's story. She ordered a full review of Horizon's 57 properties, digging into 18 months of records. What she found was chilling. Dozens of complaints, mostly from guests of color, had been dismissed or misreported. The mistake too many organizations make is treating bias as a one-off problem, a bad apple, not a poison tree. Maya saw the truth. The tree itself needed to be uprooted. She launched Horizon Forward, a diversity and equity initiative, not for PR, but for measurable change, new training, anonymous feedback systems, and compliance panels to ensure no complaint would ever be buried again. Maya's discovery wasn't just a wake-up call for her company, it was a challenge to every industry that lets business as usual excuse injustice. But uncovering the rot was only the beginning. What Maya did next, rebuilding from the ground up, would show the world what hospitality could be when it's rooted in respect. 3 months after Maya Johnson's stand in the Grand Horizon Hotel lobby, the marble floors still gleamed and the chandeliers still sparkled. But something fundamental had changed. The air no longer carried the weight of judgment. It hummed with possibility. Maya didn't just reclaim her hotel that day, she reimagined what hospitality could mean, not just for one location, but for an entire industry. This was no quick fix or hollow apology. This was transformation, built on the promise that every guest, no matter who they are, deserves to feel they belong. Maya's first move was to empower Elena Ruiz, the concierge whose courage had turned the tide. Elena was named permanent general manager, not as a reward, but because she embodied the leadership Maya wanted: principled, empathetic, unafraid to speak truth. Under Elena's guidance, the hotel suspended its old reservation system, replacing it with one that flagged any dismissed complaints for review. Maya also rolled out Horizon Forward, a company-wide initiative that went beyond slogans. It mandated anti-bias training for every employee, from front desk to housekeeping, and introduced anonymous feedback systems to ensure no voice went unheard. Across Horizon's 57 properties, guest advisors, real people, not bots, were hired to handle complaints within 48 hours, with transparency at every step. This kind of change is what sets true reform apart. Take Salesforce, for example. In 2015, CEO Mark Benioff launched a diversity initiative after discovering pay gaps in his company. He didn't just issue a statement, he audited salaries, spent millions to close inequities, and made the results public. Maya's approach was similar: measurable, accountable, rooted in action. One story from Grand Horizon shows how it worked. A guest, previously overcharged and ignored, received a personal call from Elena, an apology, and a refund within a day. That guest later posted on X, "This is what a hotel should be." That post, small as it seems, was proof of a culture shifting one guest at a time. But transformation isn't just about systems, it's about people. Maya personally reached out to the guests who stood with her that day, like Sophie Miller and Jacob Nguyen, thanking them for their courage. She invited them to speak at Horizon's Leadership Summit, where they shared how a single moment of witnessing changed their view of accountability. The guests' actions, combined with Elena's stand and Maya's vision, created a ripple effect. Complaints that once vanished were now addressed. Staff who felt silenced now spoke freely. The hotel didn't just recover, it became a beacon of what's possible when respect is non-negotiable. Maya's work could have stopped there, but she saw a bigger challenge redefining hospitality itself. That meant confronting not just what happened in her lobby, but the very idea of who deserves to walk through its doors. Let's explore how she took that vision to its fullest, crafting a legacy that would echo far beyond Seattle. As the doors of the Grand Horizon Hotel closed behind Maya Johnson's transformative stand, they opened to something new, not just a better hotel, but a bold vision of what hospitality could be. Maya's journey, from a woman humiliated in her own lobby to a reformer who reshaped an industry, wasn't about vengeance. It was about a simple, powerful truth she shared at Horizon's first leadership summit. Hospitality doesn't begin with the smile you give. It begins with the respect you assume. Those words, etched now on a plaque in the Seattle lobby, are more than a motto, they're a call to action, for her company and for all of us. What Maya did went beyond fixing a broken system. She redefined hospitality as an act of inclusion, where every guest, no matter their appearance or background, is seen as worthy. This wasn't just a corporate overhaul, it was a cultural shift, one that challenged the biases we all carry. In 2025, as debates about equity and justice continue to shape America, Maya's story resonates deeply. It reminds us that change starts with the courage to confront what's wrong, even when it's uncomfortable. She didn't just audit complaints or train staff. She built a legacy where respect is the foundation, not an afterthought. Look at Hilton's Respect at Work campaign, launched in 2023 after public outcry over guest mistreatment. Hilton trained 100,000 employees worldwide, not just to avoid lawsuits, but to foster genuine inclusion. Their guest satisfaction scores rose 15% in a year, proof that respect isn't just right, it's good business. Maya's Horizon Forward initiative took a similar path, but with a personal touch. She ensured every guest who'd been wronged, like those who stood with her that day, received a direct apology and a commitment to do better. One guest, a mother who'd been ignored during a past stay, wrote on X, "I brought my daughter back to Grand Horizon. This time, we were welcomed like family." That's the power of redefining what a welcome means. Maya's story isn't just about one hotel or one industry. It's about the choices we make every day to judge or to listen, to stay silent or to speak, to exclude or to embrace. In a world that often feels divided, her legacy offers a blueprint: assume respect, act with courage, and build systems that lift everyone up. So, as you leave this story, ask yourself, what's the lobby in your life? Where can you open a door for someone who's been pushed out? Share this story, not just to celebrate Maya, but to inspire action. Because when we redefine hospitality, when we choose respect, we don't just change a moment. We change the world.